Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is now 1800 hours South African time. Welcome to Lecture 3 of Cricket South Africa's Level 1 Umpiring course, presented by Western Province Cricket Umpires Association. My name is Tom Mokorosi. I am the training coordinator of Western Province Cricket Umpires Association. This evening, I'll be taking you through laws 12, 13, 14, and 15. And then my co-presenter, Abdullah Steenkamp, will take us through laws 16, 17, and 18. After we have presented, we will activate all of your cameras and microphones, and we shall go through the questions that you have posted in the chat box. And we will also, once we've gone through the questions in the chat box, allow you to raise your hands and ask questions live, which we shall take for the rest of the evening. A reminder to please keep your questions related to the material that's being presented today, laws 12 to 18. If a question comes up that is related to a law that we will still be covering, then we shall deal with that particular question in future lectures. So moving on to tonight's lecture material, we start with Law 12, the start of play and cessation of play. I'm sure you've all heard and seen an umpire starting a match. They do a few things first. Let me talk you through that practical process. We like to start from the outside and come in towards the field of play closest to us. So we start by waving at the scorers to ask the scorers if they are ready. And they normally in provincial matches flash their light to us, or in club matches they wave. Some of them use papers. Some of them, if they're sitting in their cars, will flash their lights. So there's numerous ways that scorers acknowledge umpires' signals. You need to determine that before the start of the match, and you need to make sure that they are ready before the start of the match. So they are the first people that you as bowlers and umpire will wave at, and they will signal back to you that they're ready. Then you come into the field and you ask the fielding captain, skipper, are you ready? And then you come even closer to you and you ask your colleague at square leg, the strikers and umpire, colleague, are you ready? And then you ask the batters if the batters are ready. And if everybody has confirmed that they are ready, then you as the bowlers and umpire will call play. And the law tells us that the bowlers and umpire shall call play at the start of the match and on resumption of play after any interval or interruption. So typically we don't ask everybody every time we resume play if they're ready. The scorers, at the start of every session we ask, and then typically the fielding captain you would also ask. And I normally just put my thumb up towards my colleague at square leg, and I know if they put their thumb up as well, then that means they're ready. So really the full procedure, asking scorers, fielding captain, batters, and your square leg umpire, is done only at the beginning of a match, or I would say at the beginning of each innings, definitely. Call of time. You might have heard umpires at the end of a session call over and time. The bowlers and umpire, once again, shall call time when the ball is dead on the cessation of play before any interval or interruption and at the conclusion of the match. Although law dictates us to call time at the end of the match, it's very uncommon, especially in a limited overs match, for you to hear an umpire saying time, because the players are normally celebrating at the end of the match. And so it's just not really done. It is done if a 5-day test match, for example, has come to an end and is a draw, then the bowlers and umpire will call overtime and stumps. There is a little tradition of us umpires removing the bails after we call time. The law says that after the call of time, the bails shall be removed from both wickets. So that's just a sign to everybody watching that the particular session is over, and the umpire will call time, and if it's lunch, he or she will mention that it's lunch, and they will remove the bails from the bowler's end. Note that the law doesn't stipulate who removes the bails. So quite often what happens is, if you are at striker's end and you are standing on the 30-yard circle in a limited overs match, and your lunch break is to be taken obviously in the clubhouse, you would not always walk towards the stumps to remove the bails. If the clubhouse is in the opposite direction of the striker's end's bails, you can just ask the wicketkeeper on his or her way past the bails to remove them for you. Okay. Starting a new over. Another over shall always be started at any time during the match unless an interval is to be taken. If the umpire, walking at normal pace, has arrived at the position behind the stumps at the bowler's end before the time agreed for the next interval or for the close of play, another over shall start. So let me give you an example of myself and Abdullah umpiring at Newlands Cricket Ground. There are two ends, the Weinberg end and the other end is called the Calvin Grove end. So let's say that I am standing at the Weinberg end, and lunch, we're going to go back to our times for a test match. Lunch is due to be taken at 12 midday. Our first session started at 10 a.m. and needs to finish, or should finish, at 12. It cannot finish before 12, but it can finish after 12 if we are in the middle of an over when 12 o'clock reaches. Now, what the law is telling us here is that if, for example, over number 28 of the morning finishes at 11:59, I, as the bowler's end umpire, cannot call overtime and lunch. I will call over and I will wait in my position at bowler's end, and Abdullah will start walking from his position at square leg towards what is now currently the striker's end and will become the bowler's end for the next over if he reaches his position by or before the clock changes to 12. So at Newlands and all provincial grounds across the country, we have scoreboards which have the time, so we use that digital time as the official time for the match. So Abdullah will walk at his normal pace from his position at square leg towards the stumps at the now striker's end, which is about to change to bowler's end. If while he's walking, the clock changes over to 12, then remember, I'm still in my position at bowler's end, at the Weinberg end. I will call time and lunch. Okay, remember I called over, but I did not call time until the time clicked over to 12. So that is what the law is telling us as umpires to do. If, however, Abdullah, walking at his normal pace from square leg, gets past the return crease closest to him and is now in that umpire's box, if we can call it that, then he is officially then behind the stumps and in his place at the new bowler's end for the following over. If Abdullah gets to that position before the clock changes to 12, then a new over will start. So a new over can start at 11:59 and will probably end at 12:03, and that is when we will take lunch. Okay, I hope you understand that process. Important there is that the strikers and umpire should walk at normal pace, and the bowlers and umpire should remain in his or her position to be able to call time if the clock switches over to 12 before the strikers and position, the strikers and umpire gets into position for the next over to start. If you do not have a stadium digital clock, the two of you would have synchronized your watches with the scorers before the match started. And what you need to do is you need to decide on the fourth ball of the over that will end at 11:59, when you signal two balls left to each other, you need to decide there and then, are you going to take another over, or are you going to call over at the end of this current over? And that way there won't be the uncertainty between the two of you, and you will be able to both communicate to all the players that this is indeed the last over before lunch, or we shall take one more over. Okay. Completion of an over. Other than at the end of the match, if the agreed time for an interval is reached during an over, the over shall be completed before the interval is taken. Just as I mentioned, if an over starts at 11:59, lunch won't be taken at 12 because the over won't be completed before, say, 12:03, for example. However, there is an exception to this. Let's see what that exception or exceptions are. When less than 3 minutes remain before the time agreed for the next interval, the interval shall be taken immediately if either a batter is dismissed or retires, or the players have occasion to leave the field, whether this occurs during an over or at the start of or at the end of an over. Except, of course, at the end of an innings, if an over is thus interrupted, it shall be completed on the resumption of play. So what is the law saying here? The law says that if a wicket falls at 11:57, 11:58, or 11:59, then you shall take lunch immediately. No need to wait for the end of an over. No need to wait for 12 o'clock. Yes, you can see that it says when less than 3 minutes remain. So some might argue that 11:57 is not less than 3 minutes. But if you think about it, if you look at your watch and there is 11:57 displayed on the watch, then it is 11:57 and some seconds. It's very unlikely that when you look at your watch, it would be 11:57:00. So I always and I agree with my partner about this before the start of play. If we look up at the scoreboard and a wicket falls at 11:57, then we take lunch immediately. And that over will be completed after the lunch break. The law then speaks about the last hour of a match and a required number of overs to be bowled in that last hour. Before we look into what the law dictates about this last hour, let me just talk you through the reason that this law was put into place. As you will have seen, the laws of cricket are based on more day cricket and unlimited overs in a match. So similar to a test match format. The only addition that test match has to the laws of cricket is the fact that there are, in the playing conditions for test match cricket, 90 overs to be bowled per hour, per day. So what that equates to, if we have 6 hours of play in a day, it equates to an average over rate of 15 overs to the hour. So in test match cricket, the last hour of the match, which is only on the fifth day, this is not talking about the last hour of each day's play, only the last hour of the last scheduled day of play. In test match cricket, 15 overs need to be bowled in that hour. And the reason for this requirement is so that even if teams try to slow the game down and waste time, you will still get that 90 overs in the day for your last day of a test match. Why? Because that last hour, it's scheduled to start at 4 p.m., but if the side in a test match has not bowled, or the two teams, remember that these 90 overs are not specific to either team bowling, it's for the entire day's play that 90 overs need to be bowled. The law says that, or the playing condition says that the last hour will only commence when 75 overs in the day have been played. This is, of course, if there haven't been any interruptions for ground weather or light. And so if we only start the last hour at 16:30 because the teams have been bowling slowly, which quite often occurs nowadays in test match cricket or in all international cricket, to be fair, then what the law says and the playing condition says is that last hour would only start at 16:30, and from 16:30 to 17:30, the team that is bowling at the time will need to bowl 15 overs in that hour. And if they don't complete the 15 overs in the hour, we will carry on playing until the minimum number of overs required in that last hour have been bowled. So this law was brought into place to make sure that A, time is not wasted, or B, if time is wasted, then we still get the required amount of overs in the day and specifically in the last hour of play. So that last hour can last longer than an hour if the side bowling at the time is not bowling fast. The law is slightly different in terms of the requirement of number of overs to be bowled in the last hour. Let's see what the law says. When 1 hour of playing time of the match remains, according to the agreed hours of play, the over in progress shall be completed. The next over shall be the first of a minimum of 20 overs which must be bowled, provided that a result is not reached earlier and provided that there is no interval or interruption in play. So remember, I told you that the playing conditions for Test match cricket specify 15 overs an hour, and 15 overs need to be bowled in the final hour of the match. However, law requires 20 overs to be bowled in that last hour. Okay, so teams can't waste time, or if they do waste time, they'll play overtime, but they need to bowl 20 overs in the last hour, unless, of course, the match finishes before or during that last hour. When the minimum number of overs have been bowled in the last hour, further overs can be started only if the original time for the close of play has not been reached. So this means that in Test match cricket, if we start our last hour at 1600 hours, as we're supposed to do, and we bowl the required 15 overs by 1650, law tells us here that we can carry on playing until our scheduled close of 1700 is reached. So you can bowl more than the required minimum in your last hour. You should not bowl less than your required minimum in the last hour, unless, like I said, the match has been concluded. So how does a match conclude? The match is concluded in numerous ways. As soon as a result, as defined in Law 16, is reached, and Abdullah will cover those results for us. A match is concluded as soon as both the minimum number of overs for the last hour are completed and the agreed time for close of play is reached, unless a result is reached earlier. The match is also concluded in the case of an agreement under Law 13.1.2 as soon as the final innings is completed, as defined in Law 13.3.5. And Law 13 is all about the innings, so we will find out about those definitions shortly. The match is also concluded if, without a conclusion having been reached in the 3 points above, the players leave the field for adverse conditions of ground, weather, or light, or in exceptional circumstances, and no further play is possible. So if we're supposed to finish at 5 p.m. on Monday afternoon, but it rains from 2 p.m. and at 4 p.m. it's still raining, and we asked the groundsman or the ground authority if it were to stop raining now, how long would he or she take to get the field ready for play? And the ground authority tells us that it would take another hour and a half for the ground to be ready for play if the rain were to stop immediately. So then there's no point for us to wait around, because by the time he gets the field ready, we would have gone past the closing time of 1700. So the match is concluded immediately as per the ground authority's information to the umpires and the umpires' final decision to declare the match concluded. So that's Law 12. On to Law 13, the innings. How many innings are there in a match? I'm sure you all know that this varies based on the format of the match. Let's see what the law says. A match shall be 1 or 2 innings for each side according to the agreement reached before the match. And in normal tournaments around the world, the playing conditions will specify which format is being played and how many innings per side for each match. You can have 1 innings per side matches. You can have 2 innings per sides matches. And law will tell you that we can limit the number of overs in each or both innings or neither. It may be agreed to limit any innings to a number of overs or to a period of time. If such an arrangement is made, then in a 1 innings match, a similar agreement shall apply to both innings. So a perfect example of this is one-day internationals, where each side gets a chance to bat for 50 overs. You will never have a match where it is uninterrupted and we schedule 50 overs for the one side and 30 overs for the other side. At least we shouldn't have a match that is unequal. Of course, if there is a rain interruption during the second innings, then the second innings will be reduced accordingly, but the original plan for a match should always be equal overs per side. In a 2 innings match, similar agreements shall apply to either the first innings of each side or the second innings of each side or both innings of each side. So I'll give you a perfect example of this. In Western Province Cricket Association, we used to play 2-day cricket before a drought in 2018 and 2019 put an end to that format of the game. We used to play 120 overs in a day, which is a long day, over 2 consecutive Saturdays. And the first innings of each side was restricted to 60 overs. So yes, they could bat for less, but they could not bat for more than 60 overs per side in the first innings of both sides' batting innings. The second innings for both sides was unrestricted in terms of the number of overs that they could face. And here, according to law, both innings were unrestricted. Okay, so that rule applied to both innings. In the first innings, they were 60 overs max, and both innings in the second innings were unlimited overs that either side could bat for. And then, of course, the law will tell us about the alternation of innings. What does that mean? It means Team A bats first, and then Team B bats second. And then normally in a test match, Team A will bat again in the third innings of the match, and Team B will bat again in the fourth innings of the match. Of course, we have exceptions, and the most common one is the follow-on, which I will go through in Law 15, apologies, Law 14. And we also have a very uncommon example of a match that involved a forfeiture of an innings, and that we will deal with in Law 15. So earlier I alluded to a completed innings. What is a completed innings? A side's innings is to be completed as a side's innings is to be considered as completed if any of the following applies. Of course, if the side is all out, they've lost all 10 wickets, then they are all out. The innings is completed. If at the fall of a wicket or the retirement of a batter, further balls remain to be bowled, but no further batter is available to come in, most likely due to injury, then the innings is completed. When a captain declares the innings closed, then the innings is also completed. If a captain forfeits an innings, that innings is considered to be completed. And if the prescribed number of overs have been bowled, for example, 50 overs have been bowled in a one-day international, or the prescribed time has expired, if you're playing time cricket, then the innings shall be considered as complete. Pretty straightforward. Remember that any text in green is examined in the level 1 Cricket South Africa umpiring exam. So please make note of this. And I spoke on Monday last week about when the toss happens. It's in your exam and it's a good 2 or 3 marks. The captains shall toss for the choice of innings on the field of play and in the presence of one or both of the umpires, not earlier than 30 minutes nor later than 15 minutes before the scheduled or rescheduled time for the start of the match. So again, if we've got a 10 a.m. start, then the toss, if there is not to be a delay in the start of play, the toss will take place between 9:30 and 9:45. In common practice, the both teams prefer to toss earlier rather than later. So 9:30, we are usually ready for the toss, both captains and umpires at the pitch. It does not have to be done at the pitch. Law says that anywhere on the field of play. So just walking a yard onto the field of play over the boundary, a toss can take place there. But of course, if you've got long grass in the outfield, the coin might not land flat. So that is one of the reasons why commonly the toss takes place at the pitch. As soon as the toss is completed, the captain of the side winning the toss shall notify the opposition captain and the umpires of his or her decision to bat or to field first. And very importantly, once notified, that decision cannot be changed. Also, what the captain winning the toss cannot do is tell everybody that, hang on, we're not sure what we're going to do. I'm just going to confirm with my coach. Give me 2 minutes while I run back to the change room and ask the coach what we're going to do. Nope, that is not allowed as per law. It says as soon as the toss is completed, the captain of the side winning the toss shall notify the opposing captain of his or her decision to bat or bowl. So that is the innings law completed. Now we move on to the follow-on law. So for those of you who don't know what the follow-on is, I mentioned earlier in the innings law that in a more day cricket match and a 2 innings per side match, normally team A will bat first, then team B will bat second, and then team A will bat again in their second innings, and team B will bat again in their second innings. So the order of the batting innings will be A, B, A, B. However, the follow-on is allowed and means that if team A has a certain lead after both teams have batted first, then they have the option to force team B to bat again. And so the order of the batting innings would be A, B, B, A. Okay. So what is the required lead on the first innings for Team A to be able to request Team B to follow on and bat again? Let's see what the law says. In a 2 innings match of 5 days or more, the side which bats first and leads by at least 200 runs shall have the option of requiring the other side to follow their innings. So, in a 5-day test match, you need to lead as Team A after the first innings of both sides are completed by at least 200 runs. So let's give an example. South Africa bat first against Australia in a test match and they score 450. Australia bat second and they, in their first innings, score 250. So the lead there is exactly 200 runs. Can South Africa ask Australia to bat again? 450 minus 250 is 200. What does the law say? The law says the lead needs to be at least 200. The lead is at least 200, so South Africa can ask Australia to bat again. If Australia had scored 251, the lead would have been 199. Would South Africa have been able to ask Australia to bat again? They would not, according to law, have been able to ask Australia to follow on. If Australia scored 249, then the lead would have been 201. And so obviously South Africa would have been able to enforce the follow on there as well. Does this option apply in lesser day matches? In South African domestic cricket, we play 4-day matches. So what is the required follow on lead for a 4-day match? 150 runs in a match of 3 or 4 days. Okay, so Abdullah is currently busy with a 4-day match in Rebecca, formerly known as Port Elizabeth. And if Team A leads by 150 runs or more after Team B has completed their first innings, then Team A would have the option to force Team B to bat again. So that's in 3 or 4-day matches. A minimum lead of 150 runs is required to enforce the follow-on. I mentioned earlier that in Western Province Cricket Association club cricket, we used to play 2-day matches. There was 100-run lead required by Team A after Team B had also completed their first innings for them to be able to force Team B to follow on. And of course, we do also have multiple innings matches that last 1 day. Very uncommon, but sometimes played in school cricket here in South Africa. The lead after the first innings needs to be 75 runs or more, and then Team A would be able to force Team B to follow on. Here is a little bit of a complication. If no play takes place on the first day of a more-day match, then 14.1 shall apply in accordance with the number of days remaining from the start of play. The day on which play first commences shall count as a whole day for this purpose, irrespective of the time at which play was called. Okay, so what does this mean? Let's give you an example. Abdullah is currently busy with a 4-day match. If it rains not for the first day, but also for the second day. So let's say if it rains for the first 2 days of Abdullah's match, and we only start play on the third day, that means in terms of the follow-on law, there are only 2 days left in the match. And what's critical is that at no point in time should play have been called on day 1 or day 2. And so on day 3, when we start, we only have 2 days left in the match. Then the follow-on target would be a lead of 100 runs or more. Why? Because we've just seen in the previous slide that the follow-on target for a 2-day match is 100 runs. Let me give you an example of a test match. Test match is 5 days, and usually the follow-on target is 200 runs lead or more. If there is absolutely no play on day 1, the umpires don't at any stage on day 1 call play, then we start on day 2. We have effectively 4 days match, 4 days left in the match. So in terms of the follow-on law, it is treated as a 4-day game. And we know that a 4-day game, the lead in the first innings needs to be 150 runs or more to be able to enforce the follow-on. So that is what the law is telling us in this point that is in green, so you will be tested on it in your exam. Very important, a captain shall notify the opposing captain and the umpires of his or her intention to ask the opposition to follow on, and once notified, the decision cannot be changed. My last law for this evening, declaration and forfeiture. Time of declaration. The captain of the side batting may declare an innings closed whenever the ball is dead during that innings. And just for those of you who don't know, a declaration is when the captain of the batting side decides that they have scored enough runs, and even though not all of their batters are out, they want to complete the innings. So they declare their innings closed. When can they do that? They can do that whenever the ball is dead during that innings. And we will come to when is the ball dead in Law 20 on Wednesday. What about forfeiture of an innings? Captain may forfeit either of his or her innings anytime before the commencement of that innings. A forfeited innings shall also be considered to be a completed innings. So imagine a test match. Each side is supposed to bat twice. For whatever reason, either captain can, before the start of either of their 2 innings, they can say that, nope, we do not want to bat, so we are forfeiting our innings, and then the next side will come to bat. We've got an example of forfeited innings in the next slide, and we shall tell you all about that particular game, which has now been taken off the history books of Test match cricket. A captain shall notify the opposing captain and the umpires of his or her decision to declare or forfeit an innings. Once notified, the decision cannot be changed. Okay, so the captain needs to be sure of their decision before they inform either the opposing captain or the umpires of their decision to declare an innings closed or to forfeit an innings. So here's an example of a test match which had not one but two forfeited innings in it. It ended up quite a exciting finish to a game that looked like it was going to peter out into a boring draw because of all the rain. So what happened was South Africa against England. South Africa had already won the series 2-0 before the start of the fifth test. South Africa ended day one at 155 for 6 after 45 overs, and the next 3 days were rained out. And while all of that rain was happening, the two captains were in discussion about making a game of it by only having one batting innings each. And eventually what they ended up doing is South Africa batted on day 5 until they were 248 for 8. That innings was declared. Then England forfeited their first innings, and then South Africa forfeited their second innings, and then England batted their fourth innings to chase South Africa's first innings score of 248 and ended up winning the game by 2 wickets in scoring 251 for 8. And both captains at the time were lauded for making a game out of what would have become a damp squid because of all the rain. But unfortunately, it turned out that the match was fixed. And I'm sure you all know of the late Hansi Cronje. He was involved in match-fixing scandals around this time and was eventually banned for life from cricket. So we just need to be careful whenever there are such wild ideas from captains as to the reason and the validity of those ideas. Abdullah, that is my 4 laws for this evening. I'm handing over to you for the next 3 laws, laws 16, 17, and 18. I hope you are back already from your day's cricket at St. George's Park.
Thank you so much, Tom. Good evening to you and good evening to the rest of the attendees. Yes, we had an early end to the day. It started raining around about 4:30. And we waited a bit and it started raining heavier, and we called time at the end of the day at about 5:20. Law 16 is the result. In a 2-innings match, what does the law tell us? So after both sides has completed 2 innings, how do you determine the winner? You look at who scored the most runs. And the team that scored the most runs will win the game in a 2-innings match. The same principle applies in a 1-innings match. So this game only consists of 1 innings. Whoever scored the most runs after both sides has completed their innings will win the 1-innings game. Also, when it comes to the result, according to the law, the umpires can award a match to a particular side. So let's see what the law tells us when the umpire can do this. So a match shall be lost by a side who either concedes defeat or, in the opinion of the umpires, that side refuses to play for whatever reason. If a side either concedes defeat or the side refuses to play, the umpire, as per the law, can award the match to the other side. Excuse me. But before taking this action or before awarding a match, it's important that the umpire needs to find out why the side is refusing to play. So you go speak to that particular team's captain and find out why they are refusing to play. Then you inform them of the law. If they do refuse to play, you can award the match to the other side. And if the captain persists, you can then award the match to the other side. Let's look at a video.
Over the last 140 years, more than 2,300 test matches have been played. Over 1,500 of these have ended in a result. Over 700 have been drawn, 2 have been tied, and only 1 has ended in a forfeit.
The thing I remember about the forfeit test is none of us had a clue what was going on, really.
According to law 16.3.2, a match shall be lost by a side which, in the opinion of the umpires, refuses to play. On August 20, 2006, this rule was invoked for the first time on an afternoon that swung wildly between high drama and farce. An hour before tea on the 4th day, at the end of the 56th over of England's second innings, umpires Darrell Hare and Billy Doctrove asked for a change of ball.
It was one of the reserve umpires came out with a new box of balls. It was clear they were changing the ball. No big deal there. But instead of asking the bowling side to choose the new one, he asked the batting side, and you think, oh, hello, interesting.
The umpires then awarded England 5 penalty runs, confirming that they had pulled Pakistan up for tampering with the ball. The trouble was there was no evidence, no jelly, no dirt, no sandpaper.
A lot of people that looked at that ball have different opinions. Some feel it was clearly tampered with, and some think it was more than just playable. It was a good-looking ball. Others think you can see some evidence of scratching, but none that suggests it's been done on purpose and by hand, or even by a foreign object. So very mixed views.
It was after the tea break, taken more than 15 overs, after the 5-run penalty, that things really escalated. The umpires walked out, the English batsmen walked out, the Pakistanis didn't.
They felt hugely wronged, you know, they weren't sure that whether they wanted to come out.
After waiting for 20 minutes, the umpires walked to the Pakistan dressing room, came back a few minutes later and took the bails off.
And the match is aborted or abandoned or cancelled or no, wrong, none of that. We hear the match has been awarded to England. Wow.
That wasn't the end of it either. After a protest lasting almost an hour, and following discussions with match referee Mike Proctor, Inzamam Al-Haq finally leads the Pakistan team out again. This time, though, the umpires stay put. They've made their decision, and they're sticking by it.
My view of that was that it was very inflexible. Mike Proctor was the match referee in a very difficult position. I think there should have been an instruction from on high, from the chief executive or chairman of ICC, that this is a unique situation because of the unproven circumstances. In a proven circumstance of a tampered ball and a side refusing to come out, fair enough, but this was unproven.
Several hours after the bails were taken off, the ICC and the English and Pakistan cricket boards confirm in a joint statement that the match had indeed been forfeited. The hits kept on coming. With no evidence to back up the accusation, the ICC dropped the ball tampering charges, but Inzamam was banned for 4 one-dayers for refusing to lead his team out. They also removed Hare from international duty, who in turn threatened to sue the ICC and the PCB for racial discrimination. 2 years later, the ICC overturned the result from a Pakistan loss to a draw, but the MCC refused to recognize this.
It was all incredibly nasty and another stain on the game, and there's never been any concrete proof that Pakistan were in the wrong anyway.
To date, this remains the only scorecard in history to state England awarded the match, opposition refused to play. In the end, though, there was only one real loser: cricket itself.
So what is a tie in a cricket game of more than 1 day's duration? So the game shall be a tie when all innings have been completed and the scores are equal. So in a, let's say it's a 2 innings match, side A scores 100 runs in their first innings, side B scores 50 runs in their first innings, side A bats again and scores 100 runs in their second innings, and in the fourth innings of the game, side B was dismissed for 150 runs. So after 4 innings were completed, the scores are exactly 200, scores are tied, and that is a tie in a more day game. So what is a draw? We've just spoke about what the results are, how you win in a 2 innings match, how you win in a 1 innings game, how you can award a game. We've just discussed what a tie is. All other results are seen as a draw. So winning it. So what happens? Side A needs 1 run to win the game. The batter hits the ball towards the cover boundary, and before the batters complete the 1 run, the ball goes over the boundary. So the law tells us that, yes, they only needed 1 run to win the game, but because the boundary was scored before the run was completed, that boundary fall will be added to the batter's score as well as the batting side's score. So in terms of statements of the result, the law tells us that side batting last. How will you state if that side batting last win the game? It's by the number of wickets still to fall. So side A or side B needs to score 200 runs to win the game. They get the 200th run with only 5 wickets down. So what is the statement of the result of this particular game? Side B wins the game by 5 wickets. If the fielding side wins the game, the result shall be stated as a win by runs. So side A needs to score 201 to win the game. They get dismissed. Side B needs to score 201 to win the game. They get dismissed for 150. So side A wins the game by 50 runs. If the match is decided by one side either conceding defeat or if they refuse to play, how will you state that result? It will be match conceded or the match was awarded to side A or side B. So what happens if there's mistakes in scoring? the law tells us, let's say side B needs to score 200 runs to win the game. The scoreboard shows they need 2 runs to win. The ball gets hit down to third man, and the batters run the 2 runs. So now the score is on 201. Everyone shakes hands. Game is now concluded according to the batters and the fielding side. And as they're walking off the field, the scorers tell them, sorry guys, there's a mistake in the scoring. We are actually, the target is 205 and not 201. So another 4 more runs needs to be scored. So what do you do then? The law tells us that when the players leave the field and the side batting last has either not completed the innings, the number of overs in the last hour or in that innings has not been completed, or the agreed of close of time has not been reached, unless one side concedes defeat, the umpires needs to order play to resume. Players needs to go back onto the field. There's still another 4 runs to be scored. Law then guides us by saying players now needs to go back. And again, you still need to have overs left, let's say in your last hour, or if time has not been reached, you need to go back and score those 4 runs. So once the umpires have agreed with the scorers, the correctness of the scores at the conclusion of the game, once that is done, umpires are happy, scorers are happy, then the result cannot be changed afterwards. Number of balls in the over. So currently, as per the laws, there should be 6 valid balls in each over, and of the 6 valid balls that has been bowled from the one end, that end of the over, the next over needs to be bowled from the other end. When does an over start? Over start as soon as the bowler begins his or her run up. As soon as the bowler take his or her first step, that is when that over starts. If the bowler does not have a run up, the over starts as soon as his or her bowling action starts for the first delivery of that over, or when bowling action is when that back foot lands, that is when the over starts. Again, this is highlighted in green, so there is a question in the exam on this particular point of the law. So, which are seen as per the law as valid balls in the over. Let's look at what are not valid balls in the over. So according to the law, the following are seen as not being valid balls in the over. These balls shall not count as one for the over. Firstly, if it's called dead or is to be considered dead before the striker has had an opportunity to play at the ball. We are covering the dead ball law in our next lecture on Wednesday. And this will be covered in more detail. So point 1, if it's called dead before the striker had opportunity to play it, that shall be seen as not a valid ball. Also, if the striker was distracted while receiving the ball, that shall also be a dead ball, which we will cover in detail in Wednesday's lecture. That ball shall also not count as one of the balls of the over. If it's a no ball or a wide, that shall also not be a valid ball. And lastly, and we will cover this in later laws, when a player returns without permission and touches the ball, that ball will not be a valid ball. That ball will have to be rebowled. Similarly, when there's illegal fielding, when there's a deliberate attempt to distract the striker, or when there's a deliberate distraction, deception, or obstruction of the batter, these balls will not count. They will have to be rebuilt. So these are 4 instances that is seen as per the law as not valid balls. These balls shall not count as one of the balls or one of the valid balls for the over. So now we know which balls are not valid. So all the other balls are seen as per the law as valid balls, and they shall count towards the 6 balls of the over. The call of over after 6 valid balls has been bowled, and importantly, once 6 valid balls has been bowled, the umpire needs to wait for the ball to become dead, and only once the ball is dead and 6 valid balls has been bowled, the bowler's in umpire needs to call over before leaving the wicket. So you only call over once 6 valid balls has been bowled, and importantly, you need to wait for the ball to be dead. And once it's 6 balls has bowled, once the ball is dead, only then does the bowlers in umpire call over and can then walk towards the strikers in, and the next over shall be bowled from the other side. What happens if an umpire miscounts? So we've now just learned that there are 6 valid balls that needs to be bowled in the over. So what happens if the umpire miscounts? You'd be surprised. You would think you only need to count till 6, so you should get the spot on. Believe me, there are times that you do make mistakes. That's why it is so important. It's a crucial part of umpiring that you do get your counting spot on, especially in white ball cricket or limited overs cricket. Every ball is crucial, but it's important or whichever format. It's important that you do get your counting spot on, and you are a team on the field, so it's important that you. So in practice, what we do is after the 4th ball of the over, so some people actually after the 3rd ball of the over, you confirm with your colleague that there are 3 balls in the over left. There's a certain sign that we make, and in our practical session that we'll do before the season starts, for those of you that will do the practical session here in Cape Town later this year, we will show you exactly the signals that the umpires use when there are 3 balls left in the over. When there are 2 balls left, you also have a signal that you confirm with your partner. There are 2 balls left. Similarly, 1 ball. That's just a method to make sure that you do get your ball counting correctly. So vital part of umpiring. You need to get your ball counting correct. But what happens if umpire miscounts? Can happen. The law tells us that if an umpire miscounts, the over counted as by the umpire shall stand. Example, if the umpires only allows 5 valid balls in the over, and after 5 balls the umpire calls over, that over shall stand. Even though it was only 5 balls, the umpire miscounted, but the over shall stand. Similarly, if it's a 7 ball over or even an 8 ball over, if you allow an 8 ball over, that over shall stand. The law also allows you, if you, as the umpires, realize that you've allowed for more than 6 valid balls in the over. Let's say you've allowed the 7th ball of the over to be bowled. And now that 7th ball of the over is a no ball. But now you've realized, oh no, we've allowed an extra ball. We've allowed a 7th ball. But now the 7th ball is a no ball. We've just heard that if it's a no ball, the ball doesn't count. The ball needs to be rebowled. But the law helps us here by telling us that if you do realize that you've allowed a 7th ball to be bowled, and even though that 7th ball was a no ball, you are allowed to call over. Bowler changing ends. The law allow the bowler to change ends as often as the bowler wants to. All the law tells us is that a bowler shall not be allowed to bowl 2 overs consecutively, nor bowl parts of each of 2 consecutive overs in the same innings. Not allowed to bowl 2 consecutive overs in the same innings. Finishing an over. Other than at the end of the innings, a bowler needs to finish the over that the bowler is busy with, unless the bowler is either injured or the bowler is suspended under any of the laws. Otherwise, if the bowler is not injured or suspended, that bowler needs to complete the innings. Also, if for any reason, again, other than at the end of the innings, an over is left uncompleted, that over shall be completed on the resumption of play. Like earlier today, we after 3 balls was bowled, it started raining. So I think it was like after 41.3 overs was bowled in the Warriors innings, it started to rain. We then had to leave the field, and half an hour later the rain subsided and we came back onto the field. When we left the field, only 3 balls were bowled. The law now tells us on the resumption of play, we had to complete that over. So that bowler that bowled that particular over still had to bowl 3 balls to complete that over. So what happens if a bowler is injured or suspended during an over? The law tells us that if a bowler becomes injured or suspended during an over, another bowler shall complete the over for that particular bowler, provided that that bowler does not bowl 2 overs consecutively, nor that bowler bowls part of each of 2 consecutive overs in that particular innings. The last law that I'm covering for the evening, and after this we will open the floor for the Q&A session. Scoring runs. So how do we score runs? There are 3 ways. Firstly, as often as the batters, while the ball is in play, have crossed and made good the ground from end to end. So runs are scored as often as the batters, after making good the ground, whether they run 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, even 8, even 9. I can't remember ever seeing a 9, but I've seen a 5 many years ago. But as often as the batters make good the ground and run, those are seen as runs. When a boundary is scored, whether it's a boundary 6 or boundary 4, that's how you score runs. And lastly, you score runs when penalty runs are awarded. So these are the 3 ways how runs get scored in a cricket game. There are also short runs, and there are 2 types of short runs. You get unintentional short runs and you get deliberate short runs. We will now go into detail the differences between an unintentional short run and the deliberate short run. There is a video that will explain this. Firstly, so what is a short run? A short run is if a batter or if batters fails to make good the ground when they turn for a further run. So whether it's they turn for the 2nd run or 3rd or 4th, and they turn short. What does short mean? They do not put the bat behind the popping crease or any part of the person, whether it's you can put the bat behind the popping crease or any part of your person. And once that is done, and if you turn for a 2nd, that's a valid run. But if you don't put any part of your person or the bat behind the popping crease, and then you turn for 2nd run, that is seen as short. So it's either unintentional or deliberate. We will go into detail now. So now we know the definition of a short run. The law also tells us that even though a short run shortens the succeeding one, the latter, if you complete it, shall not be regarded as short. Also, some strikers do stand outside the crease when facing a ball. The law tells us that. So if a striker that's standing outside the crease when batting, and if that striker sets off for the first run from in front of the popping crease, they will do so without any penalty. Let's look at a video.
Hello guys, welcome to my channel. This video is a new addition to the analysis series. Let's get started. On 15th of November 2018, second day of second test match between Sri Lanka and England, a strange incident happened. Let's watch the footage. Looks like a normal short run case, isn't it? Well, that's not the case. Let's see what umpire's decision was. If you did not understand what he signaled, he initially disallowed all the runs scored by the batsman on that delivery. Further, he informed the batsman about deliberate short running and awarded 5 penalty runs to the fielding side. Now, let's see what the cricket law has to say about running short. There are two categories in this, unintentional and deliberate. Let's take a look at unintentional short running first. If a batsman runs short, then the umpire shall call and signal short run as soon as the ball becomes dead, and that run shall not be scored. For example, if they run 2 and if they run 1 short, then only 1 run will be scored. Now, let's take a look at deliberate short run. Cricket law states that if either umpire considers that one or both the batsmen deliberately ran short, then wait for the ball to become dead and further disallow all the runs scored on that delivery, return the batsmen to their original end, and award 5 penalty runs to the fielding side. Now, let's see why the umpire considered this incident as deliberate short running. As you can see, both the batsmen start running and then striker Roshan Silva feels that the ball will reach the boundary. But upon seeing Moeen Ali has stopped the ball, he runs back to the striker's end. But in between, the striker Roshan Silva did not ground the bat at all, which made the umpire to consider this as deliberate short run. If he had at least tried to ground the bat, then most likely that the umpire would not have considered this as a deliberate short run. 5-run penalty for this feels a bit harsh, isn't it? Now let's see why exactly this law exists. In an IPL match between Mumbai Indians and Kings 11, while chasing 231, Mumbai Indians needed 16 runs of the last over. Kieron Pollard, who faces the first ball of the over, strikes the ball and sets off for the run thinking that he can come back for 2. But upon realizing that he cannot make it, he runs back to the striker's end without completing the first run. And it can be seen that he did that deliberately as he wanted to get back the strike. It is clearly unfair as he got 1 run and also he came back to the strike. To prevent the players from doing such things, this law exists. But in Roshan Silva's case, he was not trying to gain any unfair advantage. But since he did not make any effort to complete the first run, it was ruled deliberate short run. Still have any doubts with this? Do let me know in the comment section. If you like the video, then hit the like button and share with all your friends. If you have not subscribed yet, then don't forget to subscribe for more such contents.
So let's just summarize what the law say. We just covered short runs. There are 2 types of short runs, unintentional short runs and deliberate short runs. So just to summarize what the video informed us. So when it comes to unintentional short runs, so if either of the batters runs a short run, The umpire concerned shall call and signal short run when the ball becomes dead. If one or both batters run short and the ball then subsequently goes over the boundary, the short run shall be disregarded and the boundary shall count. If both batters run short in the same run, as per the law, this shall only be regarded as one short run. If more than one run is short, then all runs that are called short shall not be scored. And if there's been more than one short run, the umpires shall inform the scorers of the number of runs to be recorded. When it comes to deliberate short runs, so what does the law tell us to do? If either umpires consider that either of the batters deliberately ran short, when the ball is dead, call and signal short run, and then do the following. The bowler's in umpire shall disallow all runs to the batting side. Return any not out batter to his or her original end. If there wasn't a no ball or a wide, signal that to the scorers. Also award 5 penalty runs to the fielding side. Inform the captain of both sides, and this will also be reported to the governing body of cricket for that particular game. Runs awarded for penalties. There are the various types of penalties that you get under the laws, and they are, we've just covered deliberate short run. If the batters deliberately run short, 5 penalty runs will be awarded to the fielding side. Players returning without permission, there's also 5 penalty runs that will be awarded to the batting side. Similarly, illegal practice on the field, no ball wide, illegal fielding. If the ball strikes the helmet that was placed on the field behind the keeper, unfair play under law 41 and player conduct under law 42. So there are various penalties that are awarded under the laws. Runs scored for boundaries, currently as per the law, 2 types of boundaries. You get a boundary 4 and a boundary 6, and we'll cover them in the next law on Wednesday evening. So how many runs are scored when a batter is dismissed? The law guides us here. The law tells us that when a batter is dismissed, any runs for penalties awarded to either side shall always stand. So if a batter is dismissed, and let's say it's a bowler bowls a front foot no ball and the batter is run out, that no ball will always stand. Wides always stand. Any penalty run shall always stand. No other run shall be credited to the batting side except if a batter is dismissed obstructing the field. The batting side shall score any runs completed before the offence. We will cover obstructing the field in later laws. However, if the obstruction prevents a catch from being taken, no run shall be scored other than penalties. If a batter is dismissed run out, the batting side shall be credited with the runs completed before the wicket was put down. When it comes to crediting of runs, the law tells us that if the ball is struck by the bat, all those runs shall be credited to the striker, except when 5 penalty runs are awarded, those 5 penalty runs shall not be awarded to the striker. There is a section in the scorebook or column in the scorebook where you add these 5 penalty runs. The 1 run penalty for a no ball They shall be recorded as no ball extras in the scorebook. They shall not be added to the batters or the strikers score. If the ball is not struck by the bat, runs shall be scored as either, if there are penalty runs, they will put in that particular column. If it's byes, whether it's legs byes, whether it's no balls or wides, there is a column in the scorebook where you add these extras. If byes or leg byes do accrue from a no ball, the 1 run penalty for the no ball shall be scored as no ball extras, and the remainder shall then be scored as either byes or leg byes. The bowler shall be debited with all runs scored by the striker, all runs scored as no ball extras, those will also be debited against the bowler, and all wides shall be debited against the bowler. The batter, when must the batter return to his or her original end? So when the striker is dismissed in any of the following modes that we're going to cover, the not out batter needs to return to his or her original end. If the striker is out bowled, the next ball must be faced by the new batter. Then the not out batter cannot now say, I'll face the next ball. The not out batter needs to go back to his or her original end. Similarly, to stumped, if you get dismissed, hits the ball twice, the not out batter needs to turn to the original end. If the striker gets given an LBW, not out batter, the original end. Same applies to hit wicket. Same applies to if the striker gets out caught, the not out batter needs to go back to his or her original end. Similarly, when obstructing the field, where the obstruction prevents a catch from being taken, the not out batter needs to go back to his or her original end. Thank you so much, Tom. That is the laws I am covering for this evening. I'm now handing back over to you, and we can now go into the Q&A session. Tom, you're on mute. Can you unmute yourself, please, Tom?
Thank you very much, Abdullah. We are 3 minutes early today for our question and answer session. Great strike rate as usual from your side, getting through your laws, and also I think picked up the rate this evening. So I have activated the option for all of you to put on your cameras. So if you wish to do so, you may go ahead. I see a couple of you have already done so. And then just please stay on mute until you want to ask a question. And if you do want to ask a question, put your hand up first and we will give you the floor. Before we open the floor up to questions and answers live via microphones, we're going to go through what is on the chat box this evening. First question is from Mr. Pinar, and it is to do with the change of the follow-on target. Abdullah, what if there is play on half of day one? Is it still considered a 5-day match? How does the follow-on work in such an occasion?
Thank you so much for your question, Mr. Pinar. So when it comes to determining the follow-on target, the important thing that you need to consider is it's day one that is the important day. Was there any play or was play called on day one? If the answer to that question is yes, then this will be still a 5-day test match, and the follow-on target will be 200 runs. or the lead needs to be 200 runs. Even if you call play and then subsequently leave the field, play was still called, it will still be seen as a day's play, and it will still be a 5-day test match, i.e. the following target will be 200 runs. So to answer your question, your game had a full half a day on day one. So because play was called, that gets seen as a full day. So your game will still be a 5-day test match. So in terms of the follow-on target, Leeds needs to be at least 200 runs. This is another example. Let's say day 1 and day 2 and day 3 was rained out, and your test match only starts on day 4. That first ball only gets bowled on day 4. So now it means that you lost day 1, you lost day 2, and you lost day 3. And play was only called on day 4. So now your game is a 2-day game. So what is the lead? The follow-on lead in a 2-day game? It is 100 runs. So the important thing here is it needs to be either the first day takes place or the second or the third. That is the important thing. Just to another example, just to clarify when it comes to losing a full day, it needs to be that full day's play that are lost. In the example of, let's say, a 5-day test match, play takes place on day 1. Day 2 gets rained out, and day 3 gets rained out, and day 4 gets rained out, and you only now start to play on day 5 again. So play took place on day 1, you lost 3 days, and now only play play can take place only on day 5 again. So what will be the follow-on target? It will stay 200 in this example. And the reason, yes, we lost 3 full days, but play started on day 1, and that is the important thing. This law only gets activated if there's no play on day 1 or 2 or 3. If the moment there's play on day 1, it then stays. The follow-on target stays whatever it is for that particular game. Whether it's a 5-day test match, the lead should be 200. A 4-day game, it should be 150. A 2-day game, it should be 100. Over, Tom.
Thank you very much, Dula. Very clear and very thorough. Next question is from Mark. What do you do if you have a scorer from each team scoring, but after the first innings, there is a huge disagreement of the scores? For example, there's 50 runs difference between the two scorers. And in this particular incident, the scorers refuse to sit together because they are big rivals. Abdullah?
Mark, the correctness of the scores, even though the scorers they record all runs, all wickets and all overs that gets taken, the law actually tell us when it comes to the correctness of the scores, it's actually in the hands of the umpires. They need to make sure. It is, for me, it's funny because we don't actually keep score, but when it comes to the correctness, we need to make sure that it is correct. So in this case, if there's a discrepancy, your 50 runs is a huge discrepancy, but because according to the law, the umpires, you are in charge of the correctness of the score. And if there's no agreement between the two of them and they are rivals, you actually need to go physically go check those scorebooks. Get the two scorebooks in front of you. Find out where the discrepancy is. You need to physically go and check from over 1 to over 2. That's why it's good practice in any game. Let's say the game starts at 10 o'clock and the lunchtime is at 12 o'clock. Before going to and enjoy your lunch, go over to the scorers and ask them, are you guys happy? Does your scorebooks balance? If they don't balance, you need to then sit with them and they need to find why they don't balance. And after they get whatever the error is balance, go and enjoy your lunch. Similarly, now after lunch, if you get to tea time, before going to tea, go to the scorers check. End of the day's play, similarly checked. If you've done this, I'm sure there wouldn't have been a 50-run difference. So importantly, go check at every interval whether the scorebooks balance. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Tom.
Yes, I can, Dula. I think quite importantly, the mistake that was made there was that two scorers were not sitting next to each other. Whether they're big rivals or the worst of enemies, the scorers need to sit next to each other. If it is a cold and slightly rainy day and they don't want to be outside, they can sit in the same car together. The scorers must always sit together so that they can confirm their scores after every over. The best scorers in the world confirm the score after every ball. We did have an incident way back about 10 years ago where two experienced scorers at Universities Week, it was University of Cape Town against University of Port Elizabeth, who were playing against each other, and the scorers had a difference of about 2 runs when it came to the completion of the first innings. They were sitting together, so I'm not sure how they did not match in their totals, but the interval, the lunch break, had to be extended until such time that their scores agreed. So, Mark, I think to answer your question, play will not resume until the scores agree. So that is why scorers need to sit together to be able to confirm scores as often as possible. Next question is also from Mark. In a miscounted over, if the extra ball is a no ball and you call over, if your playing conditions allow for free hits, does the free hit move to the first ball of the next over? No, unfortunately, Mark. The new over will start afresh with a normal delivery. There is no carrying over of the free hit. Remember that it was already a mistake that a no ball was bowled and the batting side would have benefited at least 1 run from the no ball extra. They won't get the benefit of a free hit, the first ball of the next over. Abdullah, am I correct in saying that?
Yes, Tom, 100% correct.
Thank you. Next question is from Sandeep. I'm not sure exactly what he means here or if it is as simple as it sounds. How many runs can a striker take? I think that question was typed out when you were talking about you've never seen batters running more than 5. But Abdullah, is there a limit to how many runs batters can run between the wickets?
No, Sandeep. While that ball is still in play, the batters can run as many as they can. If it's 8, 9, or 10, hard for me to believe that so many runs can be taken. But as long as the ball is still in play, they can run as many as they want. Over, Tom.
I think just to add to that, Abdullah, we will come later in the week to the dead ball law, and lost ball used to be a law on its own, but is now incorporated into the dead ball law. And that law says that if the ball is in play but becomes irretrievable, then the fielding side can notify the umpire, and the umpire can call and signal dead ball, and then the batting side will stop running, or at least the runs will stop being counted that they're running. Say, for example, there is a snake that has got onto the field and the ball is right next to the snake, and all the fielders are afraid to go close to the snake to retrieve the ball. There they can ask the umpire to call and signal dead ball because the ball is irretrievable. So then the running would stop. Next question is from Ashal. If last mandatory over was in progress and on the last ball, the team chasing needed 1 run, both batters took a single according to the scoreboard, and then the ball crosses the boundary. When the umpire comes to notice by the scorers actually informed the umpires that 3 runs were required to win, not 1. So what do we do in that situation, Abdullah? We've just come off the field having concluded the match, or we thought we concluded the match with a single, but actually we needed 3 runs to win. And after the completion of that single, the ball crossed the boundary. What would we as umpires do in this situation or decide?
Also, we get guided by the lawyer. The law tells us that when we get to this situation, if there are still time left in the game, and I'll use your example. So your last hour has started, and you mentioned that you've now reached the last over of the last hour, and and let's say for this example, you've also reached your close of time. So now, last ball in your last hour, you've reached time. They needed 1 to win. They think they get the run. As they're walking off the field, now the scorers tell us actually they needed 3. So according to the law, you can only go back if there are still overs that are left, or you still have time left. So in your example, last ball, no more overs, no more time. This, unfortunately, as per the laws, this game will be a draw because the side batting second, they weren't dismissed in their second innings, nor did they get the runs to win this game. So unfortunately, this game, the result of this game will be a draw. Over, Tom.
Thanks, Dula. Yeah, I think the complication there is the fact that the ball went to the boundary after the first run was scored. However, the boundary wasn't signaled by the umpires and not acknowledged by the scorers. So the scorers would only have recorded 1 run. And unfortunately, you cannot then change that 1 run to 4 runs. So yeah, big mistake by the scorers, and there'll be a huge report submitted by the team batting second to try and claim those points. In Western Province Cricket Association, you would have a letter going from the club to our local leagues committee, who might make a decision to award that match to the side batting second. But according to the law, us umpires, as Abdullah stated, would declare that match a draw. If it was a limited overs match, Abdullah, and that was the last ball of the second innings, then the second innings would be completed. And if you have 2 completed innings in a match, then it is a tie rather than a draw. If the innings is not completed, then it is a draw. think that's the crucial difference between a tie and a draw. Next question is from Gendre. When the batter on strike hits the ball in the air and is caught, but the non-striker and the striker had already crossed by the time that the catch was taken, then does the non-striker go back to the non-striker's end? This is a change of law since the 1st of October. Abdullah, you want to just brief us on that?
Yes, this law was changed 1st of October 2022. So this is a very recent law. It's only been a few months in effect. And what it tells us is that if a batter gets out caught, the incoming batter will face the next delivery, or the non-striker will go back to his or her original in, unless it's the last ball of the over. So if it's not the last ball of the over, the incoming batter needs to face the next delivery. Over, Tom.
Perfect, Abdullah. Next next question is from Fasaj. It is the last day of a More match and the target to win is 285. In the last hour, the side batting last needs 15 runs in 6 overs, and the time is 17:16. And unfortunately, it is starting to get dark, and the umpires decide to suspend play due to bad light. Fasad's question is, do we continue to bet, or does the match end in a draw? Abdullah, always a difficult decision for umpires to make. Please talk us through it.
Fasad, yes, always difficult. But that's why the umpires are the sole judges of fair and unfair play. That is why when we do games, we need to be impartial, we need to be neutral. And when we do make decisions in a game, we need to, when making those decisions, we need to make sure that they're fair, impartial, neutral. So when you get to these situations, the match situation should not have an impact on your decision. The two umpires, they need to make a decision whether, and we've covered this previously, that there are two crucial words that they need to take into account when it comes to fitness of play, are the conditions dangerous or unreasonable. If, according to the two umpires, yes, conditions have become dangerous or unreasonable, they shall then stop play. They shall not take into account the match situation, even if the side needs 2 runs to win, 3 runs, 1 run to win. Doesn't matter. They should not be taking the match situation into account. They should take what law tells them. Is the conditions dangerous or unreasonable? If it is, let's say it's now becoming dark, it's dangerous, they then make the call, they then suspend play. So yeah, that is the criteria that you need to take into account in making these type of decisions. Dangerous or unreasonable? If yes, suspend play. Do not look at the scoreboard and make your decision based on, oh, there's only a few more runs to get. Oh, there's only 1 more wicket to get. Let's push it. If it's dangerous or unreasonable, if yes, suspend play, irrespective of what the match situation is. Over, Tom.
Thanks, Dula. Next question is from Sarab. He's just asking for our email addresses. I've given him mine. Sarab, it probably means that you are not on my mailing list where I send out the invites and also the emails with the link of the recording after each lecture. So if you don't mind, you can either send me an email or you can put your email address in the chat box and I will add you to the mailing list so that you receive future correspondence of the course and any course material that you might have previously not received. That is all the questions that are in the chat box. I am now going to the participants list and I'm looking for hands up for any questions that want to be asked live. Feel free to ask any questions related to the material presented this evening or any admin questions related to the course in general. If there are no questions for us today, please join us again on Wednesday, same time, same place. I will be sending out a link for that lecture tomorrow evening. Note that the links are unique for each lecture, so you can't use today's link for Wednesday's lecture. And Wednesday's lecture promises to be very interactive. We had a question last week, Wednesday, on boundary catches, whether it's 6 or it should be out. And we will be tackling that very interesting subject as one of the laws to cover on Wednesday. So thank you very much for your interaction this evening. I will post a video recording of this lecture on YouTube in the next couple of hours. A reminder, if you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel, please do so that you get notified immediately when I or Abdullah adds a new video. All that's left for me to say is enjoy your evening further. We shall chat on Wednesday. Thank you and good night.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone. Bye.
Arun Kumar, you want to ask a question? Please go ahead and unmute your microphone. The floor is yours. The match is completed and the scorers have got a problem with the scores, it looks like, Abdullah. We have to go back onto the field here. So
Yes,
Arun
Tom,
Kumar,
and there's still lots of time left in the match, so we can definitely go back. There's still another hour left of play, so we can go back.
I see Arun Kula's hand is down. I think he was probably waving good night. So thank you very much,
Okay.
everybody. We'll chat on again on Wednesday.
Okay. Bye,
Cheers, bro.
everyone.